Netflix.
Here we go.
We got to get into it. I'm sorry.
Here it
I'm
comes.
sorry. We got to get into it. Common sense would tell a company that like Netflix that, hey, putting a show out or introducing a show that in a time where we have rampant pedophilia and we're uncovering all this nonsense about human trafficking, child sex trafficking, and all that.
Right.
You want to
Right.
come out with a show that over sexualizes 11-year-olds. 11-year-olds.
Right.
All right, and they use actual 11-year-olds in the film, which is even more disturbing. Like, who in the right mind saw that and said this was okay in the time frame that we're in right now? Who in your
I'd
right
be
mind?
more asking questions like, what parents thought it would be a good idea to let their child play a role like this in such a movie like that?
Yep.
That's a question I'd be asking.
Yep.
But I remember when you cut a segment about this, and I think you're right.
Yep.
Like, why? What would a movie like this be made for? What purpose would it serve?
Yep.
What group are you trying to aim for to get people to watch? Because we all know there's power in numbers. So the more ratings you get, the more power you think you have. So my question is, if you're going to make a movie that's that inappropriate, what group are you trying to appease?
Yeah. No, that's true, because no one asked for this. No one asked for this show. And that was one thing we mentioned in the last segment. For those of you guys who haven't seen the last segment, head on over to our Deviant Court podcast Facebook page and go ahead and check it out. But I said that in the last podcast, like, no one sat there and said, hey, you know what I want to watch? I want to watch a bunch of young girls and have run around half naked dancing in sexually suggestive manners. That's what the American people wanted to see. No one asked that. No one asked for that. So it's one of those things where it's like, it makes me wonder, who did you guys make this for? Who did you guys make this for? What's going on? Like, who was involved in greenlighting this? Who was involved in making the decision? Because seeing something like that, knowing what's going on, it's ridiculous. I'm just even shaking right now just thinking about it.
I think what happens is when you take something messed up like that, when you start condoning other things that aren't that far down the line from it, and you start condoning those and justifying them, other things are going to follow along, and they're going to want to be justified, and they're going to want to be validated, no matter how wrong they are.
Yep.
And I don't know where you stand, but I'm a firm believer in the Bible and the Word.
Yep.
And I was always told that, there's going to come a day where evil's going to be good and good's going to be evil.
Absolutely.
And let's be honest here, we're seeing a lot of that.
A lot
more than we want. And it's going even farther now, because now you talked about that movie, and yesterday we were talking about that seminar from that. Am I allowed to cuss on here, or do I have to keep it PG?
Go for it.
That bitch who decided to do that seminar about why pedophilia should be considered a sexual orientation.
Yes.
And
yes, that lady.
There is nothing to identify. That is a sickness, an evil sickness of that.
Yep, that's the thing.
So,
you were just saying that, and that's a great point, because when you see something like that, first of all, how did we even, we must have allowed ourselves, what happened to the point that led up where a woman like that felt confident enough to go up on stage in front of however many people were sitting in that stage, but if anything, millions of people who saw that podcast or TED Talk, and what led up to the point where whoever was at the TED Talk greenlighted and said, hey, let's give her a chance and talk about it. It's one of those things that
wrong with those people.
Exactly, but it's one of those things. The point I'm getting at is the incremental change, right? The incremental steps that they take. First is they'll see it here, whether it's in the movie or in the class or whatever it is. You start to see these little signs, and typically in Hollywood, even before this, the biggest complaint was the messages that they put in their movies and all that crap.
Yeah,
where they try to. So you see all those agendas being pushed in movies, and all of a sudden you see some of these agendas manifesting themselves in children education, right? You see it manifesting themselves in entertainment. You see it manifesting themselves in education and stuff like that, like TED Talks. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, are we trying to influence culture here? Because what it seems like to me, that it's gradual. And now you're coming out with a movie like this on Netflix, a series like this on Netflix that sexualizes children for millions, potentially billions of adults nationwide, globally to see, right? So again, what were they thinking? Who were they making this for? Because then you start to look at some of the other conspiracies that are there, and you're like, okay, you have a bunch of powerful people who are involved in some stuff like this, and this heinous crimes, and some of them had all these multinational corporations and stuff like that. And Netflix technically is a multinational corporation. So who greenlighted this? Who said, what executive on the top there said this was okay? It's stuff like that where you look at conspiracy theories and you can't help but to give a second look to them.
Right. I think, and this is just my perspective on it, and it's my opinion alone, so y'all don't gotta hold me to it, and this is what I think, but I think what happens is that these things are done for a purpose. I think there's an agenda behind it. I think there's a purpose for it in a negative way, but I also think it's being done as a distraction from what's really going on.
Absolutely.
Because let's take, for example, Epstein,
Yep.
the guy that killed himself in his own cell.
Yeah, totally believe
Killed
that.
himself.
Hey guys, if you believe that, I got a bridge to sell you.
Well, there's a reason why I'm bringing this up. Is because him and his wife, or the pimptress as they put it, I've heard that they had an island, and this, over the years, they had a lot of minors and people come there for very immoral sexual use.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of big name people there.
Yep.
That were coming through to throw down with the crowd.
Yep.
I'm not going to go into detail on that for your listeners, and I respect. But now, Epstein killed himself, but the Pinterest is spilling the beans right now.
Yeah.
And she's dropping a lot of names.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't want to get caught up.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want their crap being brought to light.
A lot of powerful people.
Yeah.
A lot of powerful people.
What does the power do? We got to distract them. Let's throw something out there. Maybe something like a very inappropriate movie on Netflix.
Yep.
I don't know. But, I'm well aware of the games that are played. You can watch the left hands. You don't see what the right hand's doing. You know what I mean?
And I don't even think, like, just even not just this movie that's coming out and having it, but like even some of the other things that we see like in society at large, where these people are like even something like social media, for example, being used as an influence to further distract and separate people from what the real issues are, right? So they have all these tools to their disposal to keep people off track and off center and off balance. And the worst part about it is we're in a position right now where everyone is pretty much, and I say this all the time on the show, acting out of emotion. Like we have to like take a stand. Like, first of all, if politics gets you this emotional, that's a problem. That's a problem with you personally. If you can't objectively look, exactly. So it's one of those things that we gotta separate ourselves, or figure out a way to separate ourselves from our emotions and see things clearly. And the easiest way for for people to do that, I would say, if you guys are listening, follow the money. Follow the money, whether it's the politician, whether it's the TV shows or corporations. Follow who's paying them, what's going on. You follow that, I guarantee you will see the answer as clear as day. It's not going to be as a black or white thing, a black all lives matter or all lives matter or this and that. Like, it's not going to be any of that anymore. You start to realize that, but the difference or the similarities between both groups, and we were talking about this earlier, Mike, is the economics of it all. I grew up in poor neighborhoods where I've seen the boot of the government on the necks of poor Americans. White, Hispanic, black, right? So the stuff like George Floyd, you see that all the time. I mean, let's just be real. I see it all the time. The only thing is, it's not just delegated or relegated to the African American community. It's in poorer communities. So what does that tell me? It tells me that if you're not economically valuable, guess what? You're gonna have the boot of the state on your neck. That's just how it is, because you're too poor and powerless to defend yourself against the state. Issue. Exactly, it's a class problem. But to answer the question for people on the right that want to talk about, they're talking about George Floyd and they're rioting and protesting about that, but they don't want to talk about this situation where white people are getting killed. It's like, well, time out. Well, don't you think that there's a little bit of backing behind those people who protest? There's been a little bit of money, like I don't know, the Black Lives Matter Corporation. Let's talk about that. The corporation that's being funded by billionaires and some millionaires and other private corporations. I don't trust that. Right. The Black Lives Matter movements that's on the ground and really are in support of actually doing what they say they're going to do. I support that. But this big corporation that's putting a lot of money into these organizations to generate that hate. That's a problem, and we need to pay attention to that. Like the whole thing when the protest starts to break out, and they started seeing stacks of bricks, just random places here and there, and it was just like, what's going on there? Who has the money to fund all this stuff, right? And then on top of that, for people on the other side, on the right, who are also saying, hey, no one is making enough complaints on white people getting murdered by black cops and things like that. It's like, okay, well, take a page from what they're doing, and you see the outrage they're causing. Why don't you go out and protest for those people too as well? That's literally it. Yeah. Go out and cause it. You have the same right that you guys on the right preach about and stuff like that. Go do it. That's what they're doing, and they're beating you right now. That's why your situation isn't being talked about. And you got to understand, the media plays the game too as well. If it bleeds, it leads. So they're looking at that. They're saying, hey, a black man gets murdered by a white cop. Oh, that's going to get a lot of people emotionally angry. And that's the game. And then they put that out there, they promote that, and then it's literally doing its job.
One thing I want to point out, though, during that, and I've always said this, that when we all stand together and survive together and fight together, we'll all prosper together. And I saw during the peaceful protests, I saw a lot of support at those protests of all different cultures coming together.
Yep.
And let me make sure the listeners understood what I just said. The peaceful protests, not the rioting, not the destroying of property.
Peaceful,
the
guys.
Who stood together and worked together. You had seniors in wheelchairs and walkers out there.
Yep.
On oxygen masks.
Yep.
They were out there.
Yep.
So if we all start doing that together for each other of all cultures, that's when everybody comes together.
Yep.
That's when the power starts to get established, that you guys may be the government, but we're the ones who run this country.
Boom.
We're the ones who get up and work our 9 to 5s. We're the ones that pay our taxes. We're the ones that give you business for you to have a business.
Yep. No, that is true.
And it's only when we learn to put our divisions aside and we learn to be supportive of one another. Let me give you an example. Down in Chicago, where I grew up, we had a saying. It's called "You do you."
Yep.
Okay? You do you meant, hey, there's nothing wrong with what you do. That's what you do. This is what I do. But there was never any disrespect, any racism, no negativity, no nothing. Everybody just went about their business. Everything was good. Doesn't mean you couldn't say, hey, how you doing? How are you? What's new? Help them out. They needed a hand. It was a great way of living and a great saying. You do you. Doesn't mean it has to be wrong. And I think that needs to become a national mentality amongst everybody as far as the citizens go. Because it's going to come down to the citizens versus the power. And I think Ronald Reagan said it best, that the government's job is to govern for the people. When the government stops doing their job, that's when the people need to stop the government from doing their job.
Absolutely.